You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and great friend of the network today that we're going to do a kind of a deep dive on the phenomenon of, what's changed over the past couple of years around, direct consumer, a huge push for, brands going completely, you hear about digitally native brands and that huge push, and then kind of the shift into a retail model as a whole. And so Charlie Ninegar here from he's over at Nixon Washington, has been with us and just been a great friend for years now. Just agreed to jump on and kind of share some thoughts and some insights as a whole. So Charlie, if I kick it over to you want to do a brief intro on yourself, and then we can kind of kick off the discussion. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be asked to be here. Aaron, you have been a good friend and a partner for me many times when we need the new agency who does XYZ or who's best in class at this. I'm always bugging you. So I hope
anytime, my friend. Love the conversations. Yeah.
So, okay. My background is, I typically run the sales departments for consumer goods companies in the lifestyle space is the kind of fancy way to say I work for fun brands that sell fun stuff. I've spent time in eyewear at a brand called Spy for a lot of years. Before that, I worked at Luxottica with brands like, Ray-Ban and things like that. And now I work at Nixon, which is in the action sport lifestyle space, or just an amazing brand. It's been around for 25 years. Our primary category is watches. We make bags, accessories, hats, wallets, belts. But if you have any sort of action sport love, then you probably know Nixon because it's really unique. It's been around for a long time, great brand, and I'm happy to be here.
No, yeah, and super happy to have you. And so, part of the conversation and the story that we've been chatting about is, I kind of alluded to at the beginning, was this, digital darlings, right? I think you call it the belle of the ball that
yes.
These digitally native brands have been, and, that huge focus. But, we're chatting about how it's changed a little bit, and would love to hear your thoughts around kind of that transition. Because I think at the end of the day right now, brands that are in that space that have been looking to grow, and at some point in time, turning to retail is almost a necessity now. And would love to hear your thoughts about how you've kind of followed that story as well.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, I'm going to need to hear some of your thoughts, because every time I listen to your podcast, I learn something new, and I'm going to try and return that favor, I guess. But no, I think it's an interesting topic, right? Because if we look back, let me think about it through my kind of lived experience is when I was a kid coming out of college and I wanted to work for a cool brand, and I went to a cool brand and I said, hire me. I got a college degree. They said, you don't know anything until you know what the customer's doing. So go work in a physical shop and work at basically a surf shop. I wanted to work for a surf brand. And they were like, we can't hire you till you work at a shop. And I think what they were saying was, go to where the customer is, learn what's going on there. And then you have value here, and we'll bring you on. And so I work for these brands that were built in a wholesale era, and they've kind of been chasing the how do we stand up and do a e-commerce business right and balance with wholesale. And at the time they're doing that, you have all these digitally native brands that are like, we have no wholesale, we're just direct, we're just online. And they were the bells of the ball, and for good reason. But that feels now like a 2, 3, 4-year-old story. I think there's so many examples of businesses that were built that way that either never got profitable or, some just didn't work. And then there's a lot that have had to say, oh, wait, customer acquisition is really a pain in the butt. We're going to have to build our own stores so we can tell our story, but that's capital intensive. And we kind of max that out. And now it's like, oh, we got to go to wholesale because that's the best way to get a new customer. And I don't know, you and I can talk. We can talk. There's so many examples of great digitally native brands that have done that. But I think what's interesting now is this moment we're at today is like, every business has to choose their own path. But what is the new story? Because I think 2 years ago it was if you were maybe the private equity person coming in, you wanted to hear we're digitally native, we own our customer, we do everything online. But I'm not sure that's the ultimate penultimate or the big story these days. It's like, there's a lot more going on. So I think we're at this interesting kind of crossing point. And I'm curious to hear also what you think about what you see going on in the market.
No, I see the same thing. And what I'm trying to get to the bottom of right now is this just a natural like growth story where you've gotten so big just online that the next step is to go into brick and mortar retail? And then the strategy behind that. And, I think we should, dive into a little bit different, what's the right retailer and pairing that with your brand, if that's the route you're going. So is it truly, hey, we've maxed out, digital almost, and the next big step, because we've taken an investment of some kind, is to go retail and to hit more customers, because most products, largest volume are still bought in store? Or is it also, or maybe it's, these two things converging, iOS 14.5 update threw everybody into a tailspin. Google, the third-party cookies are going away. And we did an event last week, and, one of the stats came out that 66% of brands have started doing nothing to address the third-party cookie going away. And it's almost like, are they not doing anything, or are they just shifting their efforts someplace else? And there's these other things that are happening as customer acquisition costs go up. Then wait, it's not quite as profitable just to be direct to consumer only.
Well, I'll jump in because, the company I live and work for now is, just to share, we probably have pretty balanced revenue from a direct channel and a wholesale channel, right? And that actually means for us that there's twice as many units going out through that wholesale channel. And we've got P&Ls, and you fall into the bottom line, and they're both adding incremental value, but it's a lot more expensive to run the direct channel right now for us. That's kind of how we've structured it, right? And every business has to find their own balance. I think of brands like, I think we were talking earlier, let's take Dollar Shave Club, for example, right? This is like, talk about the belle of the ball. This is all direct to consumer, all online,
their
recurring
commercial,
revenue.
that original commercial where he's walking around the warehouse, it's just phenomenal, right? If anybody hasn't seen that, you have to Google that original commercial.
And it launched them. And it's funny, I was at the Pattern Accelerate conference, and the founder there, Dave, was talking about them as an example. But what was interesting to me is I happen to have a friend or two who has worked there, and where are they acquiring their customers today? Well, they're on the shelf at Target. They had to go to Target because that customer acquisition cost was so high. Now, 5 years ago, that was the model, and you wouldn't ever think you'd see them going to Target. But I think it makes sense in today's era. Like, they're going to get 1 billion customers through Target, that they didn't have access to. But they've had to make that decision and find out if that's the right place. And I think it is. It does make sense, And again, when I look at my own business, we still pay a lot to acquire a new customer on our direct side. And then for a lot less expense, we can go get some of those same sales through a wholesale channel. And then for us, we're just trying to make sure we're in the right fit for a retailer. We want to be in premium lifestyle spaces. And we say no to a lot of retailers who want to carry us because they're not the fit. So it could be for brand image. It could be for, a lot of other reasons. I think, we were sharing an example of another brand who ended up in Costco, and it really disrupted their business. So I think the thing today is a business should be thinking like, where is my customer? How do I get there? And almost be agnostic of telling the customer where you want them to buy. Is like, let the customer tell you where they want to buy.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. If you are going the retail route, which I do think a lot of brands could, I think you nailed it, is pick the retailers that align with you and your brand and the products. I mean, and even in that instance, you think about just brand awareness and how much, we're talking about true multi-channel here. And I know a lot of times the term like unichannel comes out. I've got we did a podcast, one of the first ones we did with Michael Zagor, who talks about unichannel, which is how does your brand fit in universally across all the sales channels, right? And it impacted. And so in that case, you almost have this shift then of what's your direct-to-consumer website for? And a lot of you like, oh, it's sales, it's owning the customer. It's also a lot of marketing and looking at it from, at the end of the day, do you really, really care if they saw it we'll say you're in Target and they see it in Target and then they buy it on your direct to consumer site, or they see it on your direct to consumer site and they go buy it in Target.
Yeah.
That's what people are coming to grips with, right?
Totally. And I think, that cross-channel attribution, right? We wish we knew what every customer was doing, and we're not going to get there.
Which is $1 billion service out there. If anybody can nail down accurately multi-touch attribution, they can nail it down and it's accurate and people believe it. It's $1 billion.
Well, you can go from knowing nothing to knowing a lot more, but you'll probably never know everything. But I also think that's where I kind of look at chasing that dream. It's hard. And I'm glad there's really smart people working on it. But I think ultimately, like you said, is you just got to be the best brand you are, present yourself the best light you can. And then whether that's in a digital space, on your website, in marketplace, in a retail location, try and measure it and then make your decisions based on what you see happening. And for us, I do see so many people focused on building one side or the other. And I see these organizations where they're very siloed. And I think the customer's not siloed. The customer's all over the board. So you've got to show up the best you can. And I do want to ask you a very important question. Omnichannel's dead, right? We're not saying omnichannel. I like unichannel. I hear multi-channel coming back. I mean, it does seem to be kind of one of the buzzwords of the moment is this multi-channel strategy that you need to have.
Yeah, I like unichannel because the omni aspect is you're treating every different channel separately and distinctly, which you need separate strategies for, but you need a holistic strategy as a whole. Everything's so intertwined now at this point in time. And so I guess multi-channel kind of fits in there as long as, it doesn't matter, I guess, what term we use, as long as strategically at a brand and a product level, we're looking at how we're looking at the entire ecosystem of the sales channel for that product and the marketing channel for that product, or the company as a whole if you're just going for branding, because everything is so fluid and everybody's jumping from one platform to another and you're exposing your brand to them in multiple different ways. If you don't have that holistic strategy, it starts to break down, especially if you're a digitally native brand, right? And you've got a brand story. Well, if they see you on TikTok and then they see you on Facebook and they see you on Amazon and they see you on a direct consumer site and then they see you in retail and nothing aligns, there's an incongruency that people have a hard time getting over. And that's where you see these brands that I think really win have seen hey, I need a holistic view and plan for how I'm going to present my brand. Not just in, you think about UGC and how raw it can be, but you can also shape that into align with the actual, digital assets you're producing internally, the really polished stuff, the video that you're doing. And so I think that's where, I don't know, smaller brands can just, move and pivot and do those things quicker and faster, as opposed to being a giant organization that has to put it through the branding team and have weigh in from marketing or sales or, the end customer.
You build that bureaucracy pretty quick inside a brand often. But I think, I just was at this conference and I think a lot of the chatter that I heard was being really dependent upon one channel is a massive liability, right? We know in public companies, when they're really dependent on one customer, that becomes a liability, right? Oh my God, they do more than 10% of their revenue in one spot. What if that doesn't work? So I think the same thought process through one channel, and you can't do them all the time perfectly, but having a multi-channel strategy seems important. So I've got a question for you, which is, if you and I decide we're going to start a consumer goods brand today, where would you focus? How would you build it up? What do you think the right way to do it is today? And I know I'm being pretty generic here. You don't know what the product is, and there's a lot of ways to spin this, but what would you do?
I mean, in all reality, I'm mapping it out start to finish. I'm launching simultaneously third-party on Amazon as well as my direct-to-consumer website that I'm launching. I mean, the reality is, there's so many eyeballs on Amazon, right? And there's so many partners now that can help you launch a product and get product moving without using the Vine program. So I probably got a stack of about 5 different partners that I use to help launch on Amazon to raise brand awareness, probably building a headless platform so I'm not kind of strapped in the back end, a little bit more upfront investment. And then the plan is probably over the course of 2 years, just bringing up the 18 to 24 months. And then I'm going retail. along the way, I'm probably having candid discussions with major retailers and or, very specific, even to the boutique stage, to kind of grow into bigger retail. Because I think at the end of the day, um, retail is a great place you can't not be there from a branding and a marketing standpoint. Even if even if you have to give up some on the margin, right? You're on shelf in front of people still.
Yeah.
But if I were to nail down the category, I would go with a less regulated category that I could also do international expansion fairly easily. One of the big things that I'm seeing right now is that things are slowing down, across the globe. But if we think right now isolated to the US, things are slowing down. E-commerce across the board, unless your product is gasoline right now or goes in your belly. You've seen a little bit of a downturn. And when that happens, we quickly realize there's an entire globe that's now easily accessible. If you look at what's going on with Globally and Shopify and Flow, it's so easy to take a brand international right now that you can actually still see growth if you're willing to kind of go out there. I mean, it's a scary place to go out to, right? You're going to start, maybe impacting your brand. Maybe it's not, the translation is quite perfect. Maybe the demographic isn't quite perfect, but if you're not testing and learning, right, you got to be moving and shaking is kind of what I'm thinking. Or, while you're jogging and everybody's walking, and pretty soon they're running and you're jogging and they're beating you.
Well, I give you 2 thumbs up on your go-to-market strategy there. Let's go start something. Yeah, I think you're thinking about it right. But I think about it through two lenses. One is where I work today, and where I work today, we've got 5 total offices around the globe, and it's been interesting through the pandemic and coming out of it. I don't know if we're ever coming out of it, but seeing like, hey, we're really locked down in the US, but Australia's got no COVID, so they're open and commerce is flowing. And then it flips because we're through it. We've all had the first wave. Now Australia's locked down, and what's going on in Hong Kong? They're locked down. So our offices are Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, and Hossegor, France. And one thing that I think your note on international expansion is there's different waves of sort of like commerce coming back in different markets. So you'd be smart to try and take advantage if things are getting a little tough. I mean, I think they're getting a little tough globally, but especially here in North America, you're right. The macroeconomic ongoings at the moment are pretty crazy. But I like you thinking about international because there's just opportunities there. And there you have to, it's like you can't do every channel, you can't do every market, but pick a few also to build some resiliency in your business, right? So if one region starts suffering, you got another to help offset that. And I really like your talk about if we're starting something, of course you have to build your website and go direct first. But I'm sorry to go back. The other lens I look through is I spend time with startup businesses here. We have an accelerator program in San Diego. So we do these 20-week courses where we work really intensively with startup businesses, and a team of mentors tries to help them kind of figure out their path. And I think that's what I see is a lot they might have started with a Kickstarter, then they got to build a website, and then they realize, hey, it's really expensive to operate this direct only. And I think leveraging key wholesale partners for either like exposure, reduce customer acquisition costs, maybe just a touch point for your product, right? Like this, whatever product looks cool online, but man, I'd really feel a lot more comfortable about making this purchase if I could touch it, feel it, try it on, whatever it is. That's a lot of value add. And then again, maybe they make that purchase at where they're touching the product at physical retailer. Maybe they touch it, say, I like it. Next paycheck on Friday, I'm going to buy it off their website. Like, and you're not going to quite know if that's happening, but I think that's the right path. And that's what you were speaking of is really picking the right path to get to that customer and give yourself the brand exposure, right? And hopefully at the end of the day, there's some profit, right? That's what there should be.
At the end of the day, profit's always good.
Yeah. That's actually another narrative, right? The narrative around like they're high growth, they'll figure out profit later. Casper, Allbirds, I don't know, name your brand of the moment. Profit is good. Like profit is great. If you can throw some bottom line, that's always going to be valuable, whether the economy is great or it's got some headwinds like it does now. So
I'm waiting for companies and large corporations to actually set aside an R&D budget for e-commerce. If I am an executive at a Fortune, we'll say 5,000 company, so pretty good hefty chunk, I'm setting up an entire R&D. I mean, they all have R&D of some kind, but specifically around e-commerce, digital commerce, whatever we want to call it, because there's so many new platforms coming out all the time, and there's such an aversion to failing outside of R&D, right? So I'm a chemist originally, right? I spent 6 years making drugs for phase 1 and 2 clinical trials, and in that time, it taught me that not just the problem solving of designing a new pathway, but that failure, right, is an instant, right? And you can learn from that, and you want to go through as much as you can, as fast as you can. And in that setting, it's okay. You've got a budget, right? You still have something you're aiming for, but you can fail all you want along the way. And as long as you keep making your way towards the point where you can actually make that pharmaceutical. Large corporations, I believe, need to have that in place, because that's where they're falling down. They're not adapting that, hey, failure is okay mindset. And they're not doing, therefore, enough experimentation. They're not doing enough test and learning. And that's where you see these little, companies that pop up out of nowhere that can test and learn. And, they all grew up together. They don't care if they fail or not. The ad campaign didn't work out. They wasted $50,000 on this trial. TikTok didn't go as well as they thought it to, or live streaming, but they keep testing and learning. And all of a sudden something clicks and they take off and they're on fire. And then we get these unicorns. That's where I think we're going.
I think you're very right. Like, if you run the business so tight that everything has to work, you build a plan that's so tight that everything has to work, like, you're in trouble. So give yourself space to fail, do it a lot. You've tapped into something. I've got another very important question for you. So you and I build this we build this consumer goods brand. We know how we want to go to market. You and I decide we need to spend some money on social to get our customers' attention. Where are you putting your dollars today? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Is it a little too early to be on TikTok, or is TikTok working?
So bullish.
Talk to me about that.
It's TikTok. The issue with TikTok just right now is the conversion is low, but the advertising is so cheap. It's hard. You have to find the right partner that can help you identify the people that are actually working well, and then you can do your Spark ads and all that. But if I were to say where I'd be, it's TikTok. 88 minutes a day is what the average TikTok user is spending right now. 88 minutes a day. And so you have to be there, and they will find a way to significantly monetize and buy product on the platform. So I'm going all in on TikTok and then Facebook. At the end of the day, like, Google, man, like, obviously I got Google. Amazon, I've got DSP, I've got, sponsored products, sponsored brands. I've got all that on Amazon. But if we're talking like separate, the social, I'm going Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Facebook still. And I mean, Google, if you can get out ahead of this, like these third-party cookies going away, where the new idea, the way it's going to work out is basically you're uploading your ideal customer profile in a way. I'm going to kind of cut some corners here in the explanation. But if you're dumping garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And if I'm on Google right now, I'm going and partnering with as many of my top agencies as possible to proselytize this right now, because what's going to happen is if they're not prepped, if you as a brand are not prepped for those to go away, you're going to scramble to upload what that looks like, and you're going to get garbage out. And then you're like, hey, my ROAS is down, it's not working. And they're going to pull money away from Google, where in all reality, you just need to do your homework up front. I have a feeling, if we're going to launch this product, we'll say early 2023, I'm also going all in on Google, and I think there's going to be a lot of open space for people to capture share there as well.
Well, I think I heard Neil Patel say this recently. He was like, kind of, don't worry about what you can't control. And I like that, because I keep thinking like, oh, iOS 14 or cookies are going away. What are we going to do? Like, there's this whole generation of marketers who are like, what are you talking about? We used to have to buy TV ads and billboards and Time magazine ads, and we had no idea what was going on. We had some demographics, and there's no attribution, and a lot of great brands and businesses were built in those times. So we still have a lot to work with. So I think, don't despair too much. Don't worry about what you can't control, and just be smart and be out in front. And if people are listening to this podcast, they're consuming content that's going to really help them keep running their businesses when things get tough.
You just made me think of an old Dilbert, right? Because I think the digital marketers have had it they've had it the worst, right? And there's an old Dilbert where the last things they're talking about, it's marketing. That's just liquor and guessing.
Very mad.
Now it's like you have to perform. Pre-iOS 14.5 and everything, it was like just dump money in and stuff comes out. And now that's going away. Third-party cookies are going away. You've got retail media coming at you from every angle. Customer acquisition costs are up, right? It's like the last year and a half, if you've got a great marketer, digital marketing person on your team, they are gold. Retain them at all costs. Because I guarantee you they're going to get poached. They're getting hit up on LinkedIn right now. What are you most excited about over the next 6 to 12 months? Or what should people be thinking about as we kind of wrap up this episode as a whole?
I think, am I excited? What I'm excited about is, so let me tell you, this will probably come out in a couple of weeks, but today is New Year's Day for me at my company, right? We just closed our fiscal. It's July 1st.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't ruin the publishing date, but so I've got a little of a champagne hangover.
Happy New Year!
It was a long, we call it FY22, and today's the first day of FY23, which is our next fiscal. And I got to my company in December of 2019. So 4 months later, the pandemic hit. And I don't think I've had a normal year yet. And I don't think FY23 is going to be a normal year either. I think we've got a lot of macroeconomic stuff going on that's challenging. We're losing cookies, like you said, but it's going to be dynamic. And I actually think, if it's all easy, there's no real reason for you to be there getting paid to do your job. These are challenges. That's why we're here, why we get employed, is to go figure things out. And so what I'm excited about, I am going to be excited about, there's challenges ahead, and the world is changing. And the narrative of the last 18 months or even 6 months ago is already changing. So I think just trying to keep up with best practices, learn from others is what I'm excited about. I know there's a lot smarter people out there who are figuring things out. And I'm always I like to share a lot, because if I figured something out, I want to tell you what I've been doing and working. And I'm always bugging people. What do you know? What's the new trick? How do we make this thing work? So I'm excited about the year ahead. It's going to be a very interesting year ahead. And that's before we get anything political or any of the other chaos that's going on right now. But it's dynamic times. And I like that. It's not boring.
Not boring at all. Well, again, thanks, my friend, for lending us some of your time here. Thanks for being, so open to sharing. I think that's what I personally value the most, is just being able to bounce different ideas off people, and with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thanks to everybody who was able to listen to this. Look forward to continuing our digital journey together. Feel free to let others know about the podcast as well as we continue to build awareness. If you have people that you think would be great to be on, then just reach out to myself on LinkedIn. If you'd like to have a follow-up conversation, I encourage anybody, Charlie here, a great person to have in your network. So reach out to him on LinkedIn as well. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Everybody take care, stay safe. We'll have you on a future episode.
Thank you.
Been awesome.